The world was silent. Not the silence of peace, not the silence of sleep, but the silence that comes after judgment. The roaring waters had fallen quiet. The cries of the old world had disappeared beneath the deep. The mountains, once hidden under the flood, slowly lifted their heads through the mist, like witnesses returning from the edge of eternity. The sky was still heavy. Clouds drifted low across the wounded earth. The ground was soaked. The valleys were scarred by rivers that had no names. The forests were gone. The cities were gone. The laughter, the violence, the pride, the rebellion, all of it had been washed away. And there, resting upon the mountains of Ararat, stood the ark, a great wooden vessel, darkened by rain, weathered by the fury of the heavens. Covered in the marks of a storm no human hands could have survived alone. Inside that ark was the remnant of life: Noah, his wife, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, their wives, and the animals that God had preserved. For many days, the ark had floated above a world under judgment. For many nights, Noah had heard the waves strike the wooden walls. He had listened to the rainfall like 1,000 drums upon the roof. He had waited, not because he knew the future, but because he trusted the one who held the future. Now the rain had stopped. The waters had begun to withdraw, and the ark no longer moved. But survival was not the end of the story. The flood had ended, but humanity had to begin again. And before Noah would build a house, before he would plant a field, before his sons would scatter across the earth, before the world would hear the sound of human footsteps again, Noah would stand before God, because the first act of the new world would not be labor, it would be worship. And above that quiet earth, beneath a sky still wet with judgment, God was about to speak a promise that would echo through every generation after Noah. A promise not written on stone, not carved into wood, not sealed by kings, but stretched across the sky in color and light, a bow in the clouds, a sign that judgment is real, but mercy is greater. Imagine standing on the first morning after the end of the world. No markets, no streets, no voices outside your family, no familiar landmarks, no old home to return to, only mud, mist, mountains, and the deep silence of a world washed clean. Noah stepped out of the ark, not as a conqueror, not as a king, not as a man who had escaped by his own strength. He stepped out as a man who had been carried by grace. Behind him was the ark, the wooden refuge that had held life through the wrath of the flood. Before him was a new earth, empty, fragile, unknown. Above him was the God who had judged wickedness, preserved righteousness, and now called humanity to begin again. But this new beginning came with a warning. The human heart had not been made perfect by the flood. The waters had washed the earth, but they had not erased the deep need of mankind for mercy. So God would make a covenant, not only with Noah, not only with his sons, not only with their future children, but with every living creature that had come out of the ark. God would speak over the new world and declare that never again would all flesh be destroyed by the waters of a flood. And as the clouds parted, as light broke through the storm, the sign of that covenant appeared. A rainbow, not a decoration in the sky, not a natural wonder without meaning, but a divine sign, the bow of God placed in the clouds, a reminder that the Lord sees, the Lord remembers, the Lord judges, and the Lord shows mercy. This is not just the story of Noah after the flood. This is the story of the God who makes a promise after judgment. In the days before the flood, the earth had become corrupt before God. Human violence filled the land. The thoughts of mankind turned continually toward evil. The world that had been created good became a place of bloodshed, pride, and rebellion. But in the middle of a generation running away from God, one man walked with him, Noah. He was not preserved because the world was safe. He was preserved because God gave him warning, instruction, and grace. God commanded Noah to build an ark, a massive wooden vessel that would carry his family and living creatures through the coming judgment. The people around Noah continued with their lives. They saw the ark rise plank by plank, beam by beam, level by level. They heard the warnings. They watched the strange obedience of an old man building salvation on dry ground. Then the appointed day came. The animals entered the ark. Noah and his family entered, and God shut the door. Then the heavens opened. The fountains of the deep burst forth. Rain fell upon the earth, not for a moment, not for a night, but for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters rose.
Get out of my way,
Fields
you fool!
disappeared.
I won't share the
Homes
grain,
disappeared.
it's mine!
Mountains
More wine!
disappeared.
Bring me more
The
wine!
ark floated above a buried world. Inside, life remained. Outside, judgment covered everything. But God remembered Noah.
Look at the
The
old
rain
fool
stopped.
building his boat.
The waters began to recede.
The sky is clear,
A wind
you righteous
passed over the
madman.
earth.
Drink
The
with
ark
us.
came to rest upon the
Heavenly
mountains
Father,
of Ararat.
the world is lost to sin.
Noah sent out the raven.
Grant me the strength
Then the
to
dove.
fulfill your command and
At
save
first,
your creation.
the dove found no place to
Noah,
rest.
You are to
Later,
build an ark.
it returned with a fresh
A
olive
great
leaf in its
flood is
beak.
coming to destroy
Then,
all
when
life
sent again,
on earth.
it did not
Heave.
return.
Lift it
The
higher.
earth was drying.
Secure that
The old
beam.
world was gone. And now, Noah waited for the voice of God, because
You're
the
wasting
same
your time,
God who
old
had
man.
told him
There
when
won't
to
be
enter
enough
the
water to
ark
float that
would tell him when to come
monstrosity.
out.
He thinks he hears the voice
Welcome
of
back
God.
to Bible
I say
Chronicles.
he's simply mad.
Today, we continue the story of Noah, not in the storm, but after the storm. Many remember Noah for the ark. Many remember the flood.
2 by 2,
Many
enter the
remember the
vessel.
animals,
The hour
the
is
rain,
upon us.
and the
Quickly
waters that
now,
covered the
quickly.
earth. But the story does not end when the waters go down. The deeper meaning comes after the judgment. Because after the flood, God did not leave Noah standing alone in a ruined world. God spoke. God blessed. God commanded. God warned. And God made a covenant. A covenant is more than a simple promise. It is a sacred commitment established by God, carrying meaning across generations. It tells us who God is. It tells us how humanity is to live before Him. It tells us that the world is not held together by chance, but by the faithfulness of the Creator. The covenant with Noah is one of the great turning points in the Bible. It marks the beginning of the world after the flood. It establishes the value of human life. It gives humanity a renewed commission to fill the earth. It includes not only people, but every living creature. And it gives the rainbow as a sign that God remembers His promise. This story is filled with beauty, but it is not soft. It carries the weight of judgment. It carries the seriousness of sin. It carries the holiness of life. And it carries the mercy of God shining through the clouds. So let us return to the mountains of Ararat. The ark is resting. The waters are receding. The air is cold and damp. The earth smells of rain, mud, and new beginnings. Inside the ark, Noah waits, not rushing ahead, not forcing the door open, not stepping into the world before God speaks. He waits for the command of the Lord. And then, after the long season of confinement, after the storm, after the silence, the voice of God comes to Noah once again. God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark." Those words were more than permission. They were release. For months, the ark had been Noah's shelter. Its wooden walls had held his family in darkness and safety. Its beams had creaked under the pressure of waves. Its rooms had carried the breathing of animals, the footsteps of his sons, the quiet prayers of a man who had placed everything in God's hands. But what had once been refuge could not become a prison. The ark was built to preserve life through judgment. Now life had to leave the ark and return to the earth. Noah heard the command, "Go out, you and your wife, your sons and your sons' wives with you. Bring out every living thing that is with you, birds, animals, creeping things. Let them swarm on the earth. Let them be fruitful and multiply." The door of the ark, sealed through the flood, now opened to a different world. Light entered first, a pale gold light, softened by mist, spilling across the dark interior of the great wooden vessel. Dust moved in the air. Animals stirred. Birds cried from the beams. The smell of wet earth came through the opening. Noah stood at the threshold. He was older than when he entered. His hands were worn. His face carried the memory of rain. His eyes had seen the world vanish and now saw the earth reborn. Behind him, his family gathered. His wife, who had endured the long months beside him, Shem, Ham,
Protect these
and
creatures
Japheth,
and my family.
no longer merely sons of
We place
Noah,
our lives
but
in your
fathers of the
hands.
world to come. Their wives, mothers of future nations, stood in silence as the first light of the new world touched their faces.
Noah.
No one rushed. How could they? They were not simply leaving a
pleased
boat.
with you.
They were stepping out of one age and into another. Noah placed his foot upon the ground. The soil was soft. The stones were wet. The wind moved gently across the mountain slope. For the first time in many months, he stood beneath open sky. Then his family followed. One by one, they descended from the ark. 8 human souls. Only 8. The whole human future stood there on the mountain, surrounded by silence. Then came the animals. Birds burst into the air, their wings cutting through the mist. Some circled above the ark as if testing the sky. Others flew toward valleys not yet filled with song. Hooves struck the earth. Beasts moved down the slopes. Small creatures scattered among stones. Larger animals stepped carefully, smelling the new ground, listening to the open
waters
world.
are receding.
The ark emptied.
It is
Life flowed
finished.
out. What had been gathered in
Look,
darkness now
a
spread into
rainbow
light.
in the clouds.
And as the animals moved across the earth, the first sounds of the restored world began to rise. Wings, footsteps, breathing, the call of birds, the movement of living things. God had preserved life. But Noah understood something profound. The first duty of the rescued is not to celebrate themselves. It is to worship the one who rescued them. So Noah did not begin by measuring land. He did not begin by building a house. He did not begin by claiming territory. He did not gather his family and say, "This world belongs to us now." Instead, Noah built an altar to the Lord. On that wet mountain earth, among stones washed clean by the flood, Noah chose a place of worship. He gathered rocks with his hands. He lifted them, arranged them, and built a simple altar beneath the open sky. Every stone was an act of remembrance. This stone for the voice of God that warned him. This stone for the strength to build the ark. This stone for the day the animals came. This stone for the door God shut. This stone for the nights of rain. This stone for the waves that did not swallow them. This stone for the dove. This stone for the olive leaf. This stone for the command to come out. Noah built the altar because he knew survival had not come from human wisdom. The ark had not saved him apart from God. The wood had not protected him apart from God. The design had not preserved him apart from God. Everything was grace. Then Noah took from the clean animals and clean birds, and he offered burnt offerings on the altar. The smoke rose, slowly at first, then higher. A thin column of gray against a sky that had once poured down judgment. The smell of the offering rose from the altar. The flames moved. The family of Noah stood nearby in reverent silence. This was the first recorded act of worship in the world after the flood. A sacrifice, a surrender, a declaration that the earth belonged not to Noah, but to God. And the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. The Bible does not describe this as though God needed food. He is not sustained by human offerings. He is not strengthened by smoke or flame. The pleasing aroma speaks of acceptance. It speaks of worship received. It speaks of Noah's heart turned toward God after salvation. Then the Lord said in his heart that he would never again curse the ground because of man, even though the intention of man's heart is evil from youth. This is one of the most sobering truths in the story. The flood had judged the world. The flood had cleansed the earth. The flood had removed a violent generation. But the flood had not changed the nature of the human heart. Noah came out of the ark into a new world. But he did not come out with a new humanity made perfect by water. The problem of sin remained deeper than the surface of the earth. It was not only in cities, not only in violence, not only in the corruption of a generation. It was in the human heart, and God knew it. The Lord saw what man often refuses to see. That judgment alone cannot create righteousness within the soul. Still, in mercy, God declared that he would not again strike down every living creature as he had done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Think about that promise. The world Noah stepped into was uncertain. The land was damaged. The future was fragile. Everything familiar was gone. Would the seasons return? Would crops grow again? Would the sun rise in dependable rhythm? Would the ground produce food? Would life continue? God answered before Noah could build a future. Seed time and harvest would continue. Cold and heat would continue. Summer and winter would continue. Day and night would continue. The Creator who once brought order out of chaos now promised order after judgment. This was mercy woven into the structure of time. Every sunrise after Noah would become a witness. Every harvest would testify. Every winter passing into spring would remind the world that God had spoken stability over the earth. Then God blessed Noah and his sons. This blessing echoes the beginning of creation. In the first world, God blessed mankind and commanded them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now, after the flood, he gives that command again. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Noah's family was small, only 8 souls. But God's blessing does not depend on visible numbers. From one family, nations would come. From those sons, peoples would spread. From the mountain of Ararat, humanity would move into valleys, plains, coastlands, and kingdoms. The world would be filled again. But the renewed world would not be identical to Eden. Something had changed. God told Noah that the fear and dread of humanity would be upon the animals of the earth, the birds of the heavens, everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. The relationship between mankind and creation carried new tension. The harmony of the first garden had long been broken by sin. Now the world after the flood would be a world where survival, dominion, and fear existed together. God also permitted mankind to eat living creatures for food, just as he had given green plants before. But he gave a strict command: flesh with its life, that is, its blood, must not be eaten. Life was not to be treated casually. Blood represented life, and life belonged to God. Even in a world where animals could be given for food, mankind was not free to become cruel, careless, or bloodthirsty. The Creator still held the meaning of life in his hands. Then God spoke an even more serious command. For your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast, God would require it. From man, God would require it. From his fellow man, God would require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. Here, at the beginning of the post-flood world, God established the sacred value of human life. This matters deeply. The world before the flood had been filled with violence. Human blood had been spilled. Strength had become oppression. Power had become cruelty. Men had likely treated life as something cheap, something to take, something to dominate. But God declared that human life is not cheap. A person is not merely dust, not merely a creature among creatures, not merely a tool for another person's desire. Human beings bear the image of God. That image had been damaged by sin, but not erased. Even after the fall, even after generations of corruption, even after the flood, God still declared that man was made in his image. Therefore, murder is not only a crime against another human being, it is an offense against the Creator whose image that person bears. This is why blood matters. This is why life is sacred. This is why the new world could not be built on the violence of the old one. God was warning Noah's sons and all future generations. Do not rebuild the world with the same bloodshed that brought judgment before. If humanity was to multiply, it had to do so under the authority of God. If families were to become nations, those nations had to remember that life belongs to the Lord. If mankind was to fill the earth, mankind had to learn that the image of God stands behind every human face. Then God repeated the command: be fruitful and multiply. Increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. This repetition carries both blessing and urgency. Noah's family could not remain forever beside the ark. They could not live only as survivors of the flood. They had to become stewards of the new world. There comes a time when those saved by God must step forward into the calling of God. The ark had carried them, but the covenant would guide them. Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him. He said, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you." This covenant was astonishing in its scope. It included Noah. It included his sons. It included their descendants after them. It included the birds, the livestock, every beast of
This
the earth,
smoke ascends
every
to the
living creature
Almighty.
that had come out of the ark.
Let the
God was
sanctity
not
of
only
human
making a
life be
private
honored
promise to
above
one
all
man,
else.
he was declaring a covenant over the living world. The God who judged the earth now bound himself by his own word to preserve the order of life. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. The
And
words
God
are clear.
blessed Noah and his
Never
sons,
again.
and said unto them,
Noah had watched the
Be
waters
fruitful
rise.
and
He had
multiply
known the
and
terror of a
replenish the
world under
earth.
divine judgment.
fruitful
He had seen nothing
and
outside the
multiply.
ark survive the flood. Now God spoke into the fear that must have lived in Noah's heart. What if it happens again? What if the clouds return? What if the rain begins and does not stop? What if every storm becomes another end? God gave Noah a promise greater than his fear. Never again. Not because humanity would never sin again. Not because the heart of man had become pure. Not because future generations would deserve safety. But because God chose to establish his covenant. This is mercy. Mercy does not deny judgment. Mercy comes after judgment and speaks life where judgment could have been final. Then God gave the sign. This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. My bow. That word matters. The rainbow is described as a bow, a symbol that can call to mind a weapon of war. But here, the bow is placed in the clouds, not drawn against the earth, not aimed at mankind, not held in wrath, set in the sky. The sign of judgment turned into the sign of mercy. The storm clouds would still come, rain would still fall, thunder would still shake the heavens, floodwaters might still rise in certain places. Human beings would still face storms, loss, fear, and uncertainty. But when the bow appeared in the clouds, it would remind the world that God had made a covenant. God said that when he brings clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, he will remember his covenant. This does not mean that God forgets as humans forget. God does not lose memory. He does not need reminders because his mind
I
grows
establish
weak.
my
When
covenant
Scripture
with
says
you.
God remembers, it
Never
means he
again
acts
shall
according
all
to his
flesh be
covenant
cut off
faithfulness.
by the waters
He
of the
sees the
flood.
sign.
Look,
He honors
the
his
bow
word.
in the clouds.
He remains true to what
A
he has
sign
spoken.
of his mercy.
The rainbow, then, is not only for human eyes. It is God's chosen sign in the heavens, connected to his own covenant remembrance. Every time the clouds gather and light breaks through, the bow speaks. It speaks over fear. It speaks over storm. It speaks over the memory of judgment. It speaks to generations who never saw the ark, never heard the reign of the flood, never stood on Ararat with Noah. It says, God remembers. The covenant with Noah is not fragile because it does not rest on Noah's strength. Noah did not create it. Noah did not negotiate it. Noah did not earn it by promising that humanity would never sin again. God established it. That is why the covenant stands. The faithfulness of God is stronger than the failure of man. Noah looked up. The clouds above the mountains began to break. Light poured through them. At first, perhaps it was only a pale glow behind the mist. Then beams of sunlight stretched across the sky. Rain still hung in the air, thin and shining. And across the heavens, color began to form.
O Lord,
red, orange,
I thank
gold,
you for your mercy.
green, blue, violet.
You are my
A great
God.
arc of light curved over the earth, the first rainbow after the flood. Beneath it stood Noah and his family, 8 people under the sign of a promise that would outlast empires. The ark rested behind them. The altar smoked before them. The animals spread across the land. The earth glistened under the returning sun. Noah had seen darkness. Now he saw color. He had heard the roar of judgment. Now he heard the whisper of mercy. He had lived through the end of a world. Now he stood at the beginning of another. And the sign above him declared that the new world was not beginning in emptiness, but under covenant. This moment is one of the most powerful images in Scripture. The ark, the altar, the rainbow. The ark tells us that God provides salvation and judgment. The altar tells us that the rescued must worship. The rainbow tells us that God binds the future to his promise. But the story also carries a warning. A new beginning does not automatically create a faithful heart. Noah's descendants would multiply. They would spread. They would form families,
The sign
tribes,
of the covenant.
and nations. They would build,
everlasting
they would
promise.
plant, they would speak new languages,
He remembers
they would
his
fill the
word.
earth. But they would also struggle with the same ancient problem, the pride of the human heart. The flood had ended one generation of wickedness, but sin would continue to rise in future generations. The covenant with Noah was not the final answer to sin. It was a foundation of mercy in a world still waiting for deeper redemption. This is why the Bible continues beyond Noah. After the rainbow, the story does not become a simple tale of human improvement. Soon, the descendants of Noah would gather on the plains of Shinar. They would build a city. They would raise a tower toward the heavens. They would seek to make a name for themselves instead of spreading over the earth as God commanded. The old pride would return in new form. But for now, on Ararat, there is a holy pause.
The bow is in the cloud.
The storm is over.
A sign
the altar
of the
burns.
covenant between
the
you
promise shines.
and all life
Noah stands
on the
between
earth.
two worlds. Behind him, the world that perished. Before him, the world that will be filled again. Above him, the sign of God's covenant. And in that moment, the message is clear. The future of humanity does not rest first in human power, human cities, human kings, or human plans. It rests in the mercy and faithfulness of God. Let us imagine Noah walking slowly away from the altar after the covenant was spoken. The earth beneath his feet is still soft. The air is still damp. His sons walk beside him, carrying the weight of a new responsibility. Their wives look across the land and perhaps wonder where their children will be born, where their tents will stand, where their lives will begin again. There is no map, no nation, no road. Only the command of God. Be fruitful. Multiply. Fill the earth. This command is not merely about numbers. It is about purpose. Humanity was created to reflect God's image across creation, to cultivate, to steward, to build under God's authority, to fill the world with worship, justice, and life. The flood showed what happens when humanity fills the earth with violence instead. The covenant now stands as a mercy-filled boundary around the future. God gives humanity room to live, room to grow, room to repent, room to seek Him. Every season that follows is an act of patience. Every harvest is mercy. Every sunrise is mercy. Every generation born after Noah is living under a promise spoken on that mountain. And this is why the story of Noah's covenant matters even now. We live long after Ararat. We have seen cities rise and fall, kingdoms come and go, war and peace, floods and droughts, human pride and human suffering, great progress and great cruelty. Yet the world still turns. The sun still rises. Seed time and harvest still come. The seasons still move in their appointed rhythm. Why? Because God remains faithful to His word. The rainbow still appears in the clouds. It appears after storms, when the sky is torn between darkness and light. It appears when rain and sun meet. It appears briefly, beautifully, like a window into a promise older than nations. For many, it may seem like only a natural phenomenon, but Scripture invites us to see more, to see a sign, to remember a covenant, to recognize that the God who judged the world also preserved the world, to understand that mercy is not weakness and judgment is not cruelty. God's covenant with Noah teaches us that the Lord is holy. He does not ignore evil. He does not pretend that violence and corruption do not matter. He does not allow human rebellion to define the world forever. But it also teaches us that God is merciful. He preserves. He blesses. He gives life after judgment. He makes promises that do not depend on human perfection. This is the tension of the rainbow. It appears after rain, not before. It shines against clouds, not against empty brightness. It speaks of hope, but a hope that has passed through judgment. The beauty of the rainbow is born from the storm behind it. So it is with Noah. His blessing came after obedience. His worship came after survival. His covenant came after judgment. His hope came after loss. Noah did not step into a world untouched by pain. He stepped into a world where God had made a promise, and that was enough to begin again. The story of God's covenant with Noah is not simply about the end of a flood. It is about the beginning of mercy after judgment. Noah came out of the ark into a world that had been emptied, but he was not abandoned in that emptiness. God met him there. God received his worship. God blessed his family. God gave humanity a renewed calling. God declared the sacredness of life. God warned against
And so
bloodshed.
they descended from
God
the mountain,
promised the stability of
tasked
the
with
seasons.
beginning anew.
God established a covenant with every
marked
living
their journey.
creature. And God placed his bow in the clouds as a sign for all generations. The ark reminds us that God can preserve life when the world is falling apart. The altar reminds us that the right response to mercy is worship. The rainbow reminds us that God's promises stand above the storms of history. When Noah looked at the rainbow, he was not looking at a small comfort. He was looking at the sign of a covenant from the Creator of heaven and earth. The flood had shown that sin brings judgment, but the covenant showed that judgment would not be the final word. Mercy would speak, life would continue, the earth would be filled again. And from the descendants of Noah, nations would rise. Some would seek God, some would forget him, some would build altars, some would build towers, some would walk in humility, some would chase their own glory. But above the changing story of mankind, the faithfulness of God would remain. This is the message of Ararat. The world may change, generations may fail, storms may come, clouds may cover the sky, but God remembers his covenant. And when the bow appears in the clouds, it calls us to remember too. Remember the holiness of God. Remember the seriousness of sin. Remember the value of life. Remember the mercy that preserved Noah. Remember the promise that held the world after the flood. Noah's story began with obedience in a corrupt generation. It passed through the waters of judgment, and it emerged beneath a rainbow of grace. The same God who shut the door of the ark also opened it. The same God who sent the flood also spoke the promise. The same God who judged the old world also blessed the new beginning. And the same God who placed the rainbow in the clouds still calls humanity to live under his authority, his mercy, and his truth. So when the storm passes and the light breaks through, do not look at the rainbow as though it is only color in the sky. Look deeper, see the covenant, see the promise, see the God who remembers. But the story of
Bring the mud over
humanity
here.
after the flood does not
shelter is
remain on the
almost
mountain.
finished.
Noah's
Watch
sons
the
will become the
goats. They are
fathers of
wandering
nations.
again.
Their descendants will spread across the earth.
Come,
Cities
let us
will
build
rise,
ourselves a
languages
city
will
and a
grow,
tower,
ambition
lest
will
we
return,
be scattered
and
across
soon
the earth.
mankind will gather together
Faster,
on a
you
plain
dogs.
in the land of Shinar.
We need more bricks
There,
before the
they
sun
will look
sets.
toward the heavens
Move.
and say, "Let us build for ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves." The command of God was to fill the earth, but the desire of man will be to gather in pride. A tower will rise, bricks will burn in fire, workers will climb higher and higher. Human voices will unite around one dream, not worship, but self-glory. And the Lord will come down to
together.
see the city and the tower that man has built. What happens when humanity tries to reach heaven without humility? What happens when people seek a name for themselves
They
instead
sought
of
to reach
honoring the
the
name of
heavens.
God? And why did God
their
confuse
pride
their
would be
language
their
and scatter
undoing.
them across the face of the earth?
judgment is nigh.
Next time on Bible
They sought to
Chronicles,
reach
the
the
Tower
heavens.
of Babel, when
But their
mankind
pride
tried to
would
build
be
its way
their
to heaven,
undoing.
and God came
The
down.
judgment is nigh.